Hey everyone, nice to meet you all. So on behalf of Office of Alumni Relations, Career Development, and STAT, I'm excited to continue our awesome panel series. As Clara mentioned, my name is Jacob. I'm the STAT president, and I'm excited to host this. So before we get started, can each one of you introduce yourselves with your name, your class year, and what you studied at Oglethorpe, and then also include where you work now and what you do with that organization. So anybody can feel free to go first.
I'm Stephanie Moore. I graduated from Oglethorpe class of 2010. Studied communications there. I believe minored in sociology. So currently I am working for a company called Riskalyze. We are a fintech company. We have an office based in Atlanta, and we have a software that financial advisors use. So as an onboarding coach, my role, I teach advisors how to use our software.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Attebery. First, I want to thank Jacob for hosting and Clara and Mary for putting this on. I'm excited about our discussion. But I graduated with a biopsychology degree with a business administration minor in 2016. I currently serve as the Deputy Communications Director for the Primary Funding Committee in Congress, the House Appropriations Committee, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Grace. I graduated in 2011. I majored in communications and rhetoric and minored in philosophy. I'm just trying to remember all the questions we're supposed to answer. I am currently a creative director of a small family-run wholesale home decor business, but I am a freelance copywriter on the side. Before that, I wrote copy and led advertising campaigns for Apple, Coke, Google. Also dipped my toe in the corporate and political speechwriting ring and did that for a little period and still do it from time to time. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I do want to apologize in advance if you see a fuzzy little head pop up. My dog is with me in the office.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Julissa Canas. I graduated from Oglethorpe in 2019 with a degree in communications and a minor in French. Right now, I am the public engagement specialist at the city of Brookhaven. So still, kind of in the Oglethorpe area. At Brookhaven, I'm in the communications department and primarily serve as the staff liaison between our Spanish speaker population and the city, which is about roughly 30% of the population. And right now we have like an internship open for communication students. We're taking applications through this Friday. It's available on Handshake, so you guys should check it out.
Hi everybody, hola. Bueno, pues my name is Irasema Gonzalez Vargas. Everybody in Oglethorpe knows me as Ira. I am an alumna, graduated in 2008. And my background is in communications, public relations, marketing, and currently I'm working with AT&T Prepare Portfolio and Cricket Wireless. And also I am an advisor for different government agencies in the linguistic department and cultural department for different government agencies. So thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so we're gonna dig into questions now. You don't have to answer every single question, but feel free to answer any of them. And then a reminder to our audience, you can use the Q&A feature to ask questions and I'll ask them throughout. So the first question is a reflection of your time at Oglethorpe. So what is one dynamic club, organization, or course from Oglethorpe that has benefited you in your career?
I can go first. So I took a lot of PR classes with Dr. Kaib, who I see is on the attendee list, so shout out to her. But her classes have directly related to what I do at work. So like her crisis communication class and just her PR writing class. But generally all the classes I took in comms have directly impacted or, taught me something that is applicable to my current job. But as for school organizations, I was involved in the Stormy Petro newspaper, and that helped a lot to get me internships, to kind of give me some knowledge of, writing skills and, getting quick with writing and all that good stuff. That like it does have an impact in your job. Like it kind of like puts you up to speed, or I guess in the mindset.
I'd really like to add to that with classes with in gender studies and how that's really helped with like intersectionality. It's not something you typically think of in advertising, but especially with the way that the current conversation is going, it's really crucial to be able to have the way to sort of like talk about inclusivity. And that's also sort of a really good, it's like a good selling point for your skills if you are able to talk in that way, because that is what a lot of employers are looking for. I would also say that my minor in philosophy has really helped in terms of like structuring arguments. And I don't know if they offer it anymore, but I remember it was a requirement for communications major to take a public speaking course. And that was also, while nerve-wracking, was extremely helpful. And I ended up doing that for a little bit of my career. So it was super helpful.
Yeah, I'll say similar to Julissa, I also worked on the newspaper, and that got me a little bit more experience on sort of the technical side and the writing communications and things like that, which was actually able to springboard me into an internship immediately after I graduated from Oglethorpe. But just the general skills I learned in organizations like the sorority I was a part of, Tri Sigma, as well as the student government, just being able to serve and interact with other people has really helped, because my role at Riskalyze and a couple of my roles prior to here have been very much customer facing. So I'm always dealing with customers, obviously other coworkers and things like that. So just being in groups and organizations where you can contribute something, sort of find your own voice, and be able to get those sort of dimensional relationships, work relationships, and interpersonal relationships that you can build with others, I found really, really helpful.
So in addition to it, guys, I have a fabulous time. I know you, while I was taking classes on art and culture with Dr. Collins, then with Sima, Dr. Sima Shakandi, I took communications, and then Dr. Peter Cower with economics. And I can tell you, I would never, ever, ever imagine that this will lead me to these beautiful and amazing job opportunities. You know, when I think about art and culture, connected it with as being an advisor for different government agencies in linguistic and culture, imagine that was a gift from Dr. Collins. And then from Dr. Sima Shakandi, communications, even though I was one of the few bilingual students, international students that sometimes couldn't grasp the language itself, because I'm an English and a second language, she was just fabulous in giving me all these tools to be able to convey the information and present it to the audience. And then Dr. Peter Cower with economics, I couldn't deal with budgets right now, working and providing budgets to the different agencies or to my different activities if it wasn't because of him.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. So a follow-up to that question, what is something you wish you knew or had prior knowledge to before embarking on your professional pursuits?
I think I'd say differentiate yourself. Similar to what Grace actually said, is if you want to be in communications, bring an element with you that will put you above other candidates, right? I was able to pivot from behavioral neuroscience to communications and pulled what I learned in my psych classes as my biggest asset. So take interesting classes, diversify, and get involved in various organizations that will give you that step up.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially for creative, for professional creatives like copywriters, art directors, that sort of thing, you're actually being hired for the way that you look at the world. One of the things that I kind of wish I took more advantage of was like in between classes, there's like a lot of downtime, and you get so used to being told what your assignments are and what the reading is that it's really hard to sort of go a step beyond and do projects on your own, especially if you're starting out as a junior creative. There's not really a lot of opportunities for you to build your portfolio, which is what gets you into like the HR offices and get you into the interview. So in order to build your portfolio, sometimes you're going to have to create work on spec, which is, for example, if you see a brand that you really love and you really like their voice and what they're doing, try creating like just pretend that your work that they hired you and create a campaign for them. It shows potential employers about how you think, how you problem solve, and what your approach is to a company's brand. They always want people who know what their voice is, but also know how to push it to another level that can really connect with others. So definitely recommend that.
And I will add to this, I wish I could learn more about soft skills. Soft skills, if everyone knows or not or are not aware, are relevant right now during crisis. We Americans, and I include myself, even though at that point when I was in Oglethorpe, I was an international student, I always saw myself as an American. And one thing that we still not really grasping as fully is the fact that we don't know how to deal with crisis. For instance, in Mexico, we have earthquakes all the time. And so we know we are prepared to deal with that. But in the States, we don't have that as a constant factor. So soft skills, which is leadership skills, will give you that spices, that extra addition. So I wish I could have learned more of those soft skills when I was in OU. It would have prepared me more in areas for crisis. And the other thing is, I wish I would have taken advantage of one of the most important classes that Oglethorpe, I believe, have, which is Dr. Chandler classes in terms of Spanish and culture. Because now that I am an advisor for different agencies and also working with Cricket and AT&T, my colleagues are from other backgrounds, African Americans and so forth. And I want to tell them that there are settlements, for instance, in Latin America of African Americans or Africans, and how I wish I knew more about this. And now I have to read more about it, right? But that's the essence, that's the beauty of Dr. Chandler classes in terms of getting and transfer you to another language like Spanish.
I love what Ira mentioned about soft skills. In my profession, those are like huge, if not so much a major part of what you're doing. So since it is customer service, like it's not that I have technical skills like an engineer might that I can execute to create a product. It's more relationship building, communication style, stuff like that. So as you're coming up and preparing to graduate, things like that, creating sort of those styles for yourself, kind of like Grace touched on, how you see the world. And then don't underestimate the power to build a relationship. So even if it's building relationships with students, with professors, always sort of working on that soft skill that helps so much. Deep down, I'm very much an introvert, but I challenge myself, in different opportunities to build those relationships. And that's a soft skill that can be so huge later on in life, and benefit in all sorts of different professions.
I just want to add to what Stephanie said. She just reminded me of a really cool, there's an article in Psyche magazine, and I'm really sorry if this is cheesy or nerdy to talk about, but they did a study on people who are lucky. I didn't realize that could be quantified, but basically what they did was that they did a study with, I think before COVID, with two individuals, somebody who considers himself lucky and sometimes somebody who considers themselves unlucky, and set them on similar paths to a coffee shop. The person who considered themselves lucky was the person who was like very open, interacted with people, really sought out relationships. And the person who considered themselves unlucky was somebody who's a little bit more withdrawn and closed off. And like Stephanie, I'm also an introvert. I do not like parties. I'm the one that is in the kitchen eating the snacks or petting the dogs or the cats. But if you do give yourself some opportunities to really open up and ask people questions, like especially when it comes to the interview process, like asking the company some questions, and if your brain freezes up like mine does a lot, a really good question to ask that a friend of mine who's in HR absolutely loves when she hears this question is, what were some qualities about the last person who did the job who was like really great? What were some of the qualities that made them really great? And that's a good way. That shows that you're interested in the job. It shows that you are, a solutions-oriented person. And also it's, pro tips for you on how you can get the job in the bag, So thanks for putting up with me on that.
Thank you all. That was some really valuable advice, so I appreciate it. The third question, does what you studied at Oglethorpe reflect the field that you are currently working in now?
I will say absolutely. Oglethorpe, first of all, Oglethorpe is my house. I always call it my house. An immigrant from Mexico City, getting this scholarship from Wayzata, Coca-Cola. And suddenly, in those years, really, I was one of the only few Hispanics in Oglethorpe University. And everybody became my family. So if it wasn't because I had this exchange and energy and positive and all the, not only in the classroom, but with living in campus, and then feel that they are my brothers and sisters, I wouldn't overcome any challenges that I have had through the whole journey in my career. Definitely, Oglethorpe University gave me the strength, the courage, the empowerment to get to places where I never ever as an immigrant could ever able to dream. And really, they give me the opportunity to dream high. Working at AT&T, for instance, with cricket, I never thought that I would be able to, in my role as a public relation manager, I will be able to give my insight and my feedback and my point of view coming from all these Maya, Aztec, American, Southern living, all this diverse background that I gained through Oglethorpe University, and then suddenly put it out there in a piece in an article, in a magazine, in media pitch, in press releases, blogs, social media. Everything that I learned from OU, it was the platform for me to take off and be able to have this power and empower myself too, because I didn't recognize how powerful I am as a Hispanic woman that is an immigrant.
So I'm a bit of a unique case, right? I studied biopsych and business at Oglethorpe, moved to DC, got involved with politics, and now I'm working for the committee that handles the nation's finances, right? But doing communications for for that committee. So the reason I say that is because in our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation, they typically worked for one company for decades, right? And now the workforce has expanded. We have the ability to pivot to work in very different industries and have multiple careers. I have a friend that was a nurse, and then she was a PR specialist, and now she's a consultant for special needs parents. I mean, the reason I say that is because if you end up in an industry that you thought it would be, something totally different, or you don't like it, you'll be able to pivot from that into something more desirable, and you'll use a lot of those unique elements that you have to market yourself, like a lot of the panelists have mentioned.
I will just kind of piggyback from what Alex just said. So what I learned from, to answer your original question, what I took at Oglethorpe with the comms classes and stuff, it is directly what I do now. But I went to Oglethorpe with the mindset of I'm going to be a journalist and that's it, and so after taking more classes and everything, I kind of opened up to the idea of like, maybe I could do something else that isn't just journalism. And now I'm in a position where I'm not the journalist. I'm the person kind of like pitching the story to the journalist, right? And so you can pivot. And with a comms degree, or with a lot of degrees that Oglethorpe offers, it is something that you can pivot with. Like they kind of teach you to see things in not just one way, but to kind of take a broader perspective. And that really helps you when you're looking at like very different jobs, but you find that like, I feel like I could tackle any one of those. And so you take the chance and apply. So I would say, just broaden your mindset to just not the one thing that you think you're going to do for the rest of your life. There's a lot of options out there.
I'll totally agree with Alex and Julissa. I like what Alex said about being able to pivot. I've only been out of college for just a little over a decade, and have had probably 4 or 5 different positions. And if you'd said even 3 years ago that like, hey, Stephanie, you can go work at a financial tech company, or you'll be working at a financial tech company, I'd be like, what is that? What does that even mean? So yeah, do keep your mind open. I will say that what I studied at Oglethorpe in a way reflects what I'm doing. I'm constantly communicating with our customers and things like that. I'm speaking on Zoom calls, I'm communicating through emails. So like that's huge, the sort of tangible skills there. But just overall, like Julissa said, broadening those exposure, the experiences and things like that beyond just what you're learning in your classes. I've pivoted so many different ways. I worked at a gym, I worked in retail management. I also thought I wanted to go into journalism. So the original internship that I got out of post-graduation was for a junior golf organization. So I was going to go into journalism. And then, so yeah, it's all about pivots and being able to use what you learn and what you studied and translate that into skills that you can uniquely provide to any company or organization out there.
Cool. So speaking of pivot, one of the attendees brings up a good question. How has the pandemic affected your work?
I would say I feel very fortunate that I have a communications degree. I pretty much have not been as affected. I've been fortunate to not be as affected as other people who have other specialized degrees have been, just because I mostly sit behind a laptop and type most of my day. And so that's been very fortunate in terms of like the pandemic and stuff. In fact, I think in some ways, especially in the beginning, there was a lot of lack of communication. So it really became an opportunity for, I think, a lot of people in the communications department to, like in the communications industry, to really shine, because I think one of the things is like people think that They don't need a professional writer or communications director to help them communicate because they have access to a laptop and they can use Microsoft Word or any sort of processing platform. But the thing is, like, with what we've learned in undergrad or with the communications degree is the shortcuts and how to recognize certain things and how to craft a message a certain way. And that really comes in handy, especially if, and like Ira had said earlier, in moments of crises, like where you have to sort of really think on your feet and be able to go into action mode. Some of the stuff that I remember in Dr. Rosenthal's classes and Dr. Shikane's classes, like really kicked in when I had clients who needed immediate help on their COVID messaging and that sort of thing.
I'll say my job changed a lot. Thankfully, like Grace said, we sit mostly in front of a computer, so you don't have to go, out, especially during, like the major peaks of the pandemic. But when the pandemic came down, I was in the middle of a 2020 census awareness campaign. So myself, along with nonprofit partners, we were trying to host events or go, to businesses and meet people in person to make them aware of the census and to, get them to fill it out. Essentially that was the objective. And a proven method for that was to do like face-to-face communication for people who are reluctant to fill it out in the first place. And so it made that job increasingly more difficult. And so what we had to do is shift our gaze, shift our method, try to figure out how we could message in a way that would resonate with people, even if we weren't doing, in-person events. So yeah, we did like Facebook Live events instead, or, big social media campaigns, but there is a digital divide, right? So instead we did food distribution events. And then during those events, we would hand out also like little postcards basically that had census information, because people cared more about, hey, I need to get, I need to put food on the table, I need food, I'm not thinking about the census. So how do we incorporate that message into the needs of people? And so it was just kind of shifting how we saw our whole campaign and trying to like make it in a way that would actually resonate with, resonate with people.
So in my case, so obviously, as you know, I'm from Mexico City. My parents are in Mexico City, and there suddenly the pandemic said, Ira, you need to move back to Mexico City to take care of your parents, your elder parents. And so it really changed my life, because after being in the States for so long and travel around the world, suddenly I am back in Mexico City, and my jobs are giving me the opportunity to be able to work virtually and be able to take care of my elders, So that was the first plus in terms of the pandemic. But also, it was able to help me to be more creative. One of my roles, I play different hats. So I used to work for Park and Recs and Cultural Affairs. And I was in charge of diversity and inclusion in a center, in a cultural center. So how to transfer all this beautiful art to the mood of virtually, right? So I created a virtual gallery where I embraced all the culture, flavors, spices that you could ever imagine, so that the artists could expose their art in that gallery. I couldn't been able to do that if I wouldn't have what I call my friend COVID, right? I couldn't have that because I wouldn't been able to expand my horizons and apply them in a virtual level, and more importantly, international level, because that diversity and inclusion virtual gallery now is seen from all around the world. It's not just DeKalb County, it's not just Atlanta, it's around the world. So it's a lot of plus within the crisis.
Okay, thank you all for answering that. So our fourth question is more geared towards students. So we often hear that networking internships are vital to success during and after college. So what first steps can you recommend in marketing ourselves to get exposure in the workplace? And I know we've already like kind of touched on this, but if you had like any more advice, that'd be helpful.
So I love this question because I've been working on sort of personal branding myself and kind of expanding my network over the past year. Because when COVID happened and everything shut down, I was like, oh man, we won't be going to traditional like work conferences and stuff like that. But my introverted self, I wonder how I can meet people online because like everybody's moving online. So I would say as a practical tip, make sure you have a really sharp looking LinkedIn because companies definitely check those out. Make sure if you are creating any sort of like professionalized versions of your social media, like Twitter, Instagram, or anything like that, just keep things really cohesive. But with networking, look for virtual conferences that are happening so much right now. I know I've attended a number of conferences over the past 6 to 12 months that have been free. They're obviously geared towards the customer success industry that I'm in, but look for conferences, webinars, things like that, networking groups that are putting on these events where you can connect with others virtually, because that's what the majority of people are doing right now. And find those groups and sort of introduce yourself. If you meet somebody in a webinar or virtual conference or event or something, just go look them up on LinkedIn and send them a message, said, hey, I was also at such and such webinar, would love to connect. And then that kind of puts it in their mind, like where you might know them from. If it's somebody that's in an industry that interests you or something like that. So definitely be on the lookout for networking events. And I'm also a part of a number of networking groups for like women, working moms. I've got 2 kids. So finding those groups out there and then just kind of introducing yourself online has been huge.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to add to Stephanie's point, quality versus over quantity is extremely important. And I remember in the before time, there would be a lot of like recruiting workshops and seminars. And then it almost seemed more like a game to just try to see how many headhunters and recruiters business cards you can get. Do people even use business cards anymore? I don't know. But yeah, it just seemed more like a game to see how many you can select. And, that's not going to be helpful for anyone in the long run. It's important to, kind of be almost like a spy in a way, do some recon, find the people that you really like Stephanie said, those seminars, or especially when it comes to like creative advertising, are there writers that you really like? Follow them on Twitter. And, sometimes it can be anything like just liking their posts, which doesn't seem like it would go a long way, but it can. And also they're a great resource to find other opportunities, especially writer like authors like R.O. Kwan and Mary Choi. They have been really passionate about opening up opportunities for writers of color. They're more on like the literary novel side of the writing, but it's really great to follow them. Brandon Tyler, also a really great writer. Also, whatever he comes across links or people sends him job opportunities, he's sending them. He's beaming them on his Twitter account as well. Following companies that you respect and admire. I think one thing that used to be successful, and I don't think it's as successful anymore, is when you do find somebody that you would like to get in touch with, definitely go beyond the, hey, I'm really interested in what you do. Can I pick your brain? That's really open-ended. And a lot of times the people who receive those emails don't have a lot of time. And it doesn't mean that they don't want to help you. It's just that it's hard for them. It's going to require some back and forth to actually figure out what it is that you're looking for. But if you see an essay that somebody wrote, or if you find out who the copywriter was for a certain campaign, it's just cool to send an email to say like, hey, I really love what you did on the XYZ campaign. I'm really curious about, maybe opportunities at your agency, or if you have some advice for like a junior copywriter like myself, like something that's a little bit more specific, something that is less open-ended. It'll really give them an opportunity to respond to you. And sometimes even if they don't have the opportunity to respond to you, it will stick. It'll stick in a way that they'll try to refer you to somebody who can. So one thing to keep in mind.
So I
I'll
will
also
add, no, go ahead.
go ahead.
So I also
I'll-
will add, I will add the aspect that OU is really an amazing network. One of my best memories of internship was through one of our students, alumni, friends. And I said friends because we all are friends. Once you enter in OU, I believe that we are a family, and they will help you. I will help you guys to connect. But more importantly, I think in terms of having a Hispanic, for instance, like myself, and I want to emphasize on this, is believe on yourself. Because the actual society, regardless of where you are, they will always judge you whether you have an accent, a different look, you might not have the quality that they require, right? That's always this precondition or assumptions that she looks different ways, so if she's going to be effective in her job, she sounds different than myself. She's going to really meet the goals that we are require her to do, or require her and asking her to meet the goals. And to that, the only answer is be secure about yourself. In front of everybody, you are your best brand, you are your best advocate. Without of you showing that security, you will not get into any soccer field, any higher game. And the other aspect that I want to tell you guys is LinkedIn is absolutely a great place to do network. And people right now is willing to really, if you reach out to them, you will not imagine how generous and empathetic they are toward you. It's just that you have to believe that that's going to happen, and they will connect you with the right contacts and the right venues to be able to reach out to your dreams. Once again, dream high, think about your self-esteem, where it is, and then work on it so that you can get to the highest level, and then you will project, and then therefore they will accept you wherever is your background, whatever is your language, or if you have an accent or not.
I will agree with everything everyone said. Networking is something I'm not super great at, and I'm still working on it. So it's definitely a skill you can develop over time. But I will say, in terms of internships, identify the organizations that you would maybe like to intern and check out their postings directly on their website. I mean, sometimes you find stuff in Indeed, but if it's on Indeed, probably like 1,000 people already saw it too and applied. So when you find like the targeted place, the specific internship that they just posted because you check their website often enough or whatever, it really helps get you there. All the internships, the 4 that I did while I was at Oglethorpe, were through, I reached out to whoever the coordinator for that internship was and asked, how can I apply, what do you need, and stuff like that. And then that's how I got the internship, not necessarily through the regular application process. So there's a lot of value in reaching out, and sometimes you're not going to get an answer, and that's okay. But if you continue at it, you're going to find some good responses and some good advice.
And I would like to add something else that it just came to my mind. So 20 years ago, I met the director of the Woodruff Art Center. Suddenly, 20 years after, this same director, I was a kiddo at that point, right? So now this director suddenly contact me like 3 years ago and say, hey, I have the perfect job for you, Irasema. Do you want to try it out? So believe that your oldest contacts are going to be your greatest advocates too.
Well, thank you guys. So one last question. What's the most enjoyable part of your job? Asked because working in communications can mean a lot of things, and I know we're all hoping to pinpoint the niche that best suits us and interests us. So, like, what do you enjoy most about your job? And I also want to remind the audience that you can still ask questions in the Q&A.
I have to say that one of the things I really like about being a copywriter is that you are kind of encouraged to learn, you get paid to learn a little bit about everything. So, because that's what your clients are, you're basically advocating for your clients. So you have to know everything about them. So I've learned about, I used to work for a client of mine was Georgia Pacific. So I learned about toilet paper poke through tests, which is a real thing. They actually test how thick or thin toilet paper can be and how successful those are and how to market and price them. I worked, Delta was another client, and I got to fly around a lot and I worked on their social media. Audi was a really fun client. They basically paid us to drive cars sometimes so we could test on how, competitive their cars were compared to the competition. So that is that, and also just writing and helping people craft their messaging and getting a little bit closer to helping them, communicate what they're trying to say is really, it's just a really gratifying experience, especially since I know sometimes when I'm talking for myself, there's always a word that feels like it's a little bit better than what I'm trying to say. It's at the tip of my tongue and I can't really get to it. So I sometimes am really bad at doing it for myself, but it's really great to do it for other people.
So I will say this last week, AJC, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, recognized cricket and AT&T as one of the top brands to work. I honestly wouldn't imagine to be part of it, but I think what I enjoy working with them and other companies is diversity, is the fact that that diversity is the common denominator, not only about flavor, spices, color, race, and so forth, but also the background that we in our households have that translate to our work. And so for me, the most fascinating is how to be able to connect with other teammates and create something for the brand that will empathize with the audience.
I will say, I'm in more of the public sector. So I think for me, what's very gratifying is when I'm able to put out information that's very important or vital or otherwise not accessible to our Spanish speaking community, because I personally believe that, everybody's entitled to public information. It should be made available to you in whatever language you dominate the best. And so it's really great when I get to put out information that otherwise wouldn't have gotten to the community and they are able to inform their decisions a lot better, or, just gather, anything useful from the information. So that feels great when you get to effectively communicate with the public.
Okay, a question from the audience. How important are personal and professional mentors in your lives, and who are your mentors? For example, parents, friends, a boss, teacher, etc.
So my mentors are Dr. Collins, Dr. Shakandi, Dr. Chandler, Peter Cower. They were my mentors and continue being my mentors. My family, my friends, for instance, Chris Harvin, that is within the audience right now, he is one of my mentors. He is the one that will tell me, Ira, you know what you say, it wasn't appropriate, right? That's the type of friends that I want. That's the type of mentors that I want. Not the ones that will always tell me, oh, you are saying something right, good for you. And then suddenly in the back, they will not talking right about you. And the other thing is I have incredible coaches. I encourage you guys to reach out to coaches. Even though you are young, for those that are younger than myself, I encourage you to reach out to coaches. There are a diversity and difference in coaches. There are acting coaches, there are executive coaches, you name it. You reach out to them and they will be a great sources for you, not only about the subject matter, not only about helping you internally to project it externally, but also they will be the sources that will connect you with companies, with other networks, with other persons, that, other people that can help you to grow.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, that is so true, Ira. They're incredibly important. They can be your greatest asset. They've lived a lot of life, they've faced a lot, but also their network is immense, right? So I encourage you, if you find mentors or regardless, if you're just networking, ask for help. We often think that help is a desperate move, right? But one of the most useful tools that I've found when searching for a job is really just asking whoever I'm talking to during a mentor meeting or a networking call or informational, asking them to connect me with 2 or 3 people in their field. That just enables me to understand the field a bit more and will widen my network. And those people will put you in touch with 2 other people and 2 other people and 2 other people and so on. So most people are willing to help. I think someone mentioned that, but because they've been through the same situation. They've been looking for a job. They've gone through the same thing. So use your network's network.
I would also add, don't forget your peers, especially like it does feel like people who are in your age or also in the job applicant pool, it's easy to kind of see them as competition. And in some cases that's true, but a lot of times it's important to have people who are at the same level as you or who have been through similar things as you and are experiencing it as you are. Because mentors are fantastic. You want the wide lens and you want the focus lens. The mentors who have more experience, they'll give you the big picture and help you plan your career trajectory if that's what you're looking for. But the people who are closer to it, like you are, they can provide you with the day-to-day, especially in creative advertising. Salary can be kind of a dark, murky kind of thing. And so, especially for women, female creatives and creatives of color tend to get paid less. And so, but having that sort of connection and being able to, if you feel comfortable and you trust the person that's in your network, having that sort of conversation can really sort of help you price your services appropriately and with the market. And also like you can get advice like I've been fortunate to work with a lot of really amazing clients, but sometimes you'll come across clients who are hiring a copywriter for the first time, or maybe they just don't know how to go about certain thing. Having a person who's been through it can really help, because then you have somebody who can help you sort of navigate through the tricky professional stuff, which can definitely, be anxiety inducing sometimes.
Yeah, I would second what Grace said about not playing down the benefit of folks, your age and things like that. Yeah, of course, in some instances they might be competition, but in the role that I'm actually in right now, my best friend's husband at the time was working for the company when I joined 3 years ago. And he was like, hey, I work for this really cool company. You should come apply. So, of course, leaning on those mentors and finding those, but also considering sometimes friends and things like that to be mentors. And be like, I'm looking for opportunities. I'm open to different industries. If you don't have like your heart set on working somewhere in particular, sort of putting it out to all of your friends and mentors and things like that, and saying, you know, I'm looking for something, and somebody might mention something that you would never even know what it was, or you wouldn't have ever considered in the past, but you can probably translate a lot of the skills that you've learned into whatever that position might be. So definitely looking for mentors as you're coming up, but also sort of using your friends and family and things like that to lean on them as a part of your network. It doesn't necessarily have to be completely professional filled.
I agree with Stephanie. I want to add something else, and it just occurred to me. So my acting professor is working at AT&T. I didn't know about him until I was watching some of the trainings, and he suddenly pop out in the screen, right? And he's like, "Hi, I'm Todd, and you know, do your training in diversity and inclusion." And suddenly I was like, "Oh my God, that's my teacher, right?" So I reached out to him and I said, "Todd, you know, I'm having challenges in understanding certain aspects of the brand. Can you please help me?" He was my best partner in understanding what it was my real position at Cricket, not just from my supervisors, directors, and leadership, but also he that was also part of the trainings. He's a teacher. He trains the leadership teams within AT&T. If I wouldn't know that he was if I wouldn't identify that he was my acting professor and then having this connection, I will never, ever be able to survive in cricket as a brand. As a Hispanic with a strong accent, be bilingual yet still not being able to grind 100% like an American, right? So he is giving me these tools, but it was my friend before. He was my acting professor.
Thank you, everyone. We're gonna stop the questions here, but I want to give you all an opportunity to give like a closing statement, like 1 to 2 sentences. So if you have anything else you want to say before we end.
So I will close my end with a question actually that Chris have in terms of any do's or don'ts for negotiating your salary and pay. Guys, never, ever, ever sell yourself short. I learned that rule and it cost me a lot of time and a lot of energy. I used to give my work, my translation, my interpretations, my coaching sessions for the minimum wage. And not to say that I'm Hispanic and I'm a woman, right? So I learned to never, ever sell myself short. Guys, you have the best ever degrees and careers and education that you could ever imagine. Oglethorpe University gives you all that in a package, and you just have to believe it and understand it. I know that many of you might say, well, I want to follow my own experiences, but I'm telling you guys, never sell yourself short.
Yeah, along those lines, I would close with just remaining open to possibilities, to opportunities. Just there's so many different things out there. If you want to run after something that you know 100%, like this is what I love and this is what I want to do. I wasn't one of those people. I was like, I'll you know, pursue what comes along, and if I find it interesting, I'll, you know, stick with that or go another direction. So definitely just stay open and look at companies that might be weeks, months, years old, and companies that have been around for, you know, hundreds of years. There's the whole spectrum, and there's a lot out there.
I would like to add to the question about negotiating salary and pay. 2 things I would say. One is if you are already in a job and you want an increase in your pay, make sure that you keep track of any sort of accomplishments or leadership positions that you've had on projects. Those are really good reminders. I mean, essentially at the end of the year, you know, so much has happened. They're really good for reminding your employer that you're an asset to the team, and also just something to keep in mind in the back of your mind when you go into these negotiations is, you know, there's a way to sort of balance hardball, like Ira said, you know, don't sell yourself short. That's what you should hardline at, but don't act arrogant. You know, basically, don't threaten to leave unless you actually are going to leave. Most of the time, employers don't have the time or the energy to find employees to have to retrain employees for certain roles. So they'll definitely want to keep you. But you know, you may not always get exactly what you want, but compromise moving forward one step is better than, you know, losing it all completely. That's still a step that. A second thing is that initially, if you, and this is not always the case, but usually if you get hired for a position and they give you an offer, the offer can be an opening point, you know, for discussion. You don't necessarily have to accept the first offer that they give you. This is not always the case, but usually, and in my experience is that usually if you get a first offer, it's probably at the lower end of what they have earmarked for that role. So you usually have about $5,000 to $10,000 to sort of negotiate with that. And of course, you know, be open and reasonable. If they come to you with an offer initially, you can say, I was really looking more for these kind of, for this number. And, you know, and just remember that it's just a discussion. And so I had another thought and I just totally lost my train of thought. I just got really distracted by all the screens there. But basically that's like a really good starting point for how to negotiate your pay. And I don't know if the participants have access to our contact information, but you're more than welcome to email me if you need to. Thanks.
Yeah, communications is exciting. I mean, I never imagined that I would have the opportunity to work in comms, especially with my major. But like Grace said earlier, you have the opportunity to work on a lot of different things from A to Z. So take advantage of the opportunities you have now, and good luck in your search for a job.
Yeah, I would close out by saying, you know, don't be afraid to put yourself out there, to reach out to people, to reach out to alums. You can reach out to me. Keep your Ogle friends afterwards. I mean, just the other day I needed to create a media pitch and I reached out to a fellow alum and I was like, who's a journalist, and I was like, if you were receiving a pitch, what would you like to see? And you know, that was extremely helpful. So just keep in touch with each other after you graduate, and don't be afraid to reach out to people, for sure.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So big thank you to all of our panelists. A recording of today's conversation will be available soon, as well as the bios and information for our panelists. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you guys have a great evening and a good rest of your week.